Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we unpack the hidden stories in financial filings. Today, we're diving into Jupiter Neurosciences, Incorporated's latest report, and let me tell you, this one's got more twists and turns than a roller coaster. We're talking about a company trying to navigate the tricky waters of drug development and supplements, and we've got a lot to decode. Before we dive in, if you love getting these kinds of straightforward insights from real corporate documents, make sure you are subscribed. And hey, we've got a fantastic community over on Discord where we break down these filings even further. You can find the link in the description below. Alright, let's get started. This filing is essentially an update for investors detailing efforts to sell over 10 million shares of common stock. Think of it as a company saying, hey, we've got these shares and someone wants to sell them. Here is the lowdown. The company, Jupiter Neurosciences Incorporated, is involved in developing therapies for brain disorders and rare diseases, while also dipping its toes into the consumer longevity market with a product line called Nugavir. The common thread in all of this is a proprietary resveratrol formulation called Jotrol. The main story here revolves around the sale of up to 10 million shares of common stock by a selling stockholder, Yada2 PN Ltd, often referred to as Yorkville. This isn't the company selling its own stock to raise money directly, but rather an existing investor selling their holdings. These shares are related to a standby equity purchase agreement, or SEPA, between Jupiter Neurosciences and Yorkville. This agreement allows Jupiter Neurosciences to sell stock to Yorkville under certain conditions. The shares being discussed for resale include those that could be issued upon convertible notes, shares issued as part of advances from Yorkville, and some shares that were already issued as consideration for Yorkville's initial commitment. This is a crucial point for potential investors. Jupiter Neurosciences itself will not receive any money from the sale of these 10 million shares by Yorkville. All the proceeds go directly to Yorkville. However, the company might get money from Yorkville for selling stock to them under the SEPA, which is a separate arrangement. The company is making it clear up front that this prospectus is part of a larger registration statement filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC. They're also emphasizing that investors should read the entire prospectus, along with any supplements, and that no one has been authorized to provide information beyond what is in these official documents. This is standard but important. They are telling you to be wary of any unofficial claims or promises. Stick to the facts presented here. This tells us the information is current as of late 2025, which is vital for understanding the context of the financial data we'll look at soon. Now, let's look at the table of contents. It gives us a roadmap to the whole document, covering everything from the business itself to risk factors, financial discussions, and legal matters. It is a dense read, but we'll focus on the juicy bits. The summary gives us a bird's eye view. Jupiter Neurosciences is a clinical stage company working on central nervous system, or CNS, disorders and rare conditions. They're also moving into the consumer longevity market with Nugavir, using that Jotrol formulation. This is their core identity, a pharmaceutical company in its development stage. They haven't launched approved prescription drugs yet, but they are pushing forward with clinical trials, particularly a phase IA study for Parkinson's disease. This gives us a timeline and a look at their early research. Promising preclinical results in 2021 led to plans for a human trial. Just a reminder, this is a highlight reel, and the real meat is further in. This section is where we get into the nitty-gritty of that agreement with Yorkville. Jupiter Neurosciences has the right, but not the obligation, to sell up to $20 million worth of its stock to Yorkville. This lays out the key dates in terms of the SEPA. It involved convertible notes and how Yorkville is essentially committed to buying stock if Jupiter Neurosciences needs it. This highlights that the agreement has conditions like the SEC declaring a registration statement effective. It is not an immediate free for all. This is a really interesting detail. When Jupiter Neurosciences decides to sell shares to Yorkville under the SEPA, the price isn't fixed in stone. It is based on a percentage of the market price, specifically 97% of the lowest daily volume weighted average price, or VWAP, within a certain 3-day period. This means the company effectively offers a discount to Yorkville, which is typical in these types of agreements. Span style color red. This also means investors buying in the market could see the stock price pressured if the company sells shares at a discount to Yorkville span. This part shows that Yorkville also provided some upfront funding through convertible notes up to $6 million. This was done with an original issue discount, or OID, meaning the company received less cash than the note's face value. Yorkville can convert these notes into company stock. The conversion price is set, but there are adjustments for things like stock splits, or if the company issues stock at a lower price later, which is standard. This points to a repayment schedule for the advances Yorkville made. Jupiter Neurosciences has to pay back a portion of the principal each month plus interest, and there is a payment premium involved unless they use advances from the SEPA to cover it. This reiterates that any money Jupiter Neurosciences gets from selling stock to Yorkville under the SEPA is variable. It depends on market conditions and when and at what price they decide to sell. Here is a big one regarding stock dilution. Nasdaq has rules that limit how much stock a company can issue without shareholder approval. Jupiter Neurosciences is hitting against this limit, the exchange cap, and they'll need shareholder consent to issue more shares under the SEPA. This is critical information for existing shareholders. Now, we get to the risk factors. Companies have to lay out everything that could go wrong, and Jupiter Neurosciences does not shy away from it. This explicitly states a major risk, the potential for a lot of stock being sold into the market, which could drive down the stock price. This is directly related to the SEPA agreement and the convertible notes, highlighting the impact on the current stock price. This is a fundamental risk for many biotechs. They are still in the early stages, meaning there is a lot of uncertainty about success. It is a high-risk, high-reward scenario. This is the harsh reality check. No revenue, significant losses, and more losses expected. This is a major red flag for investors who prioritize profitability. Now, this points to the precariousness of being on the Nasdaq. If they fall below certain standards, like the stock price staying above $1, they could be delisted, severely damaging liquidity and investor confidence. This is perhaps the most serious risk stated here. Going concern means the company might not be able to stay in business for the next year. Auditors flag this when there are major doubts about a company's financial stability. This is a big deal. Just looking at the financials for the years, ending the 31st of December 2024 and 2023. We see net losses of about $2.4 million in 2024 and nearly $4.8 million in 2023. That is a significant amount of red ink. Their cash flow from operations also shows substantial negative numbers, over $3.9 million used in 2024 and almost $500,000 in 2023. It is clear this company is burning through cash rapidly. In this table for the fiscal years ending 2024 and 2023, we see zero revenue. Combined with those losses, it paints a picture of a company heavily reliant on external funding, not internal sales. And looking at the cash flows here for the same years, net cash used in operating activities was a massive $3.9 million in 2024, compared to just under $500,000 in 2023. While they had a substantial inflow from financing activities in 2024, mainly from their IPO, the operating cash drain is significant. Now, let's peek at the balance sheet as of the 31st of December 2024. They had about $3.7 million in cash. That sounds okay, but when you consider their operating losses and the fact that they still need a lot of money for clinical trials, it might not be as much as it seems. The accumulated deficit is over $26 million. Showing how much loss the company has accumulated over time. And if we look at the statements of operations for those years, again, no revenue. The expenses are primarily research and development and general and administrative costs. The general and administrative expenses actually went down from 2023 to 2024, which might seem good, but it is tied to salary reductions, not necessarily operational efficiency gains. The company is quite upfront about its challenges. Under basis of presentation, liquidity and management's plans, they state, and I quote, "These conditions raise substantial doubt about the company's ability to continue as a going concern for a period of at least 12 months from the date of this report." This is a legally required statement and a serious warning sign to potential investors that the company's survival is not guaranteed without additional funding. This note points out they currently operate as a single reportable segment for financials. However, there is a mention of a transition to two segments, supplements and pharmaceuticals. This could be a sign of diversification or a way to better track performance as they grow. This is a key section because it tells us about what happened after the financial statements were prepared. And wow, there were some major events here. This refers back to that SEPA with Yorkville we talked about. It sets up the framework for Jupiter Neurosciences to potentially sell up to $20 million worth of stock to Yorkville. The details about pricing, caps, and conversion terms are here, and it mentions they will seek shareholder approval to get past that Nasdaq ownership cap. This is where the convertible notes come in. Yorkville provided some initial funding, around $3.7 million in late 2025, with a larger note issued, showing a discount. These notes have interest, a maturity date, and can be converted to stock. This details some of the upfront costs involved in securing that SEPA agreementa cash fee and shares of stock given to Yorkville for their commitment. It is part of the cost of doing business to secure potential future funding. This section focuses entirely on the selling stockholder, Yorkville. It states they are offering up to 10 million shares and that Jupiter Neurosciences itself won't get any cash from these sales. This table shows Yorkville's holdings. Prior to the offering, they hold a small number of shares, but the maximum they could potentially sell from this offering is 10 million shares. This highlights how much influence or ownership Yorkville could gain through these arrangements. Here we learn about the company's capital stock. They have common stock with voting rights and preferred stock that could be issued in the future. The key takeaway is that common stockholders get 1 vote per S-share, and dividends are only paid if the board decides to do so. This information about director independence is important for corporate governance. NASDAQ requires a majority of the board to be independent, meaning they don't have significant ties to the company that could cloud their judgment. Jupiter Neurosciences states they meet this requirement. This table shows who owns a significant chunk of the company. Krista Rosen, the CEO, and Marshall Hayward, the CSO, are among the largest individual shareholders. Notice how much stock they, along with other officers and directors, hold as a group. Krista Rosen, the CEO, owns nearly 13.1 million shares, representing about 35.4% of the company. That is a significant stake, showing strong alignment with the company's success from the top leader. If the company does well, he does very well. Combined, the executive officers and directors own over 21 million shares, making up more than half of the company. This concentration of ownership can give management a lot of control over company decisions. Claes Wallerstedt, who is on the Scientific Advisory Board, also holds a substantial stake of almost 3.3 million shares, or 9.5%. This ownership suggests he is deeply invested in the company's science and success. Let's talk about how the top brass is paid. The summary compensation table shows salaries, stock awards, and option awards. For Krista Rosen, the CEO in 2024, his salary was around $134,000. But in 2023, it was much higher, over $771,000, reflecting significant option and stock awards. This fluctuating compensation structure often happens in companies going through IPOs or major funding rounds. Salim El-Masri, the CFO, had a salary of about $127,000 in 2024. Similar to the CEO, his 2023 compensation was boosted by stock awards and options, totaling over $778,000. Marshall Hayward, the Chief Scientific Officer, received about $107,000 in salary in 2024. His 2023 compensation was over $1.1 million, again largely due to stock and option grants. These figures highlight the company's strategy of using equity as a significant part of executive compensation, especially during pre-IPO or early public company phases. Interestingly, there is a detail about salary deferrals. For Krista Rosen and Marshall Hayward, their base salaries were significantly reduced in late 2023 until the company raised a certain amount of capital. This is a common tactic when a company is conserving cash before or after a major financial event like an IPO. This section describes the company's equity incentive plan, which is how they grant stock options and other equity awards to employees, directors, and consultants. It is designed to align their interests with shareholders. This table gives a snapshot of the stock options and restricted stock units held by the named executive officers. It shows a substantial number of unexercised options and unvested stock awards, indicating a significant portion of their potential future compensation is tied to the company's stock performance. This is where we look for dealings between the company and people who have a close relationship with it, like executives or major shareholders. The company's CEO, Krista Rosen, loaned the company money. As of late 2024, there was a balance of over $146,000 outstanding, plus interest. However, it is noted that this loan was fully repaid in October 2025. This is a massive number. So many employees and board members agreed to forgive over $4 million in accrued salaries and bonuses. In exchange, they received stock options and restricted stock units. This shows how strapped for cash the company was and how the team was willing to take equity instead of cash compensation. A common sign of a company focused on future growth rather than immediate financial returns. This table reiterates who owns a lot of the company's stock. It confirms that the executives and directors collectively own over 50% of the company, giving them considerable control. This clearly shows the power vested in the leadership team, owning more than half the company. This can be positive if they're all aligned and working towards shareholder value, but it also means less influence for outside investors. Looking at the unaudited balance sheet for September 2025, their cash has significantly dropped to about $723,000. This is a stark decrease from over $3.7 million at the end of 2024. Combined with the increasing accrued compensation and accounts payable, it emphasizes the need for that new SEPA funding. Here we see the numbers for the 3 and 9 months ending the 30th of September 2025. The net loss for the 9 months is over $6 million, a big jump from the $911,000 loss in the same period of 2024. This table shows research and development expenses shot up dramatically. For the 9 months ending September 2025, R&D was over $2 million compared to just under $300,000 in 2024. This increase is attributed to service agreements for Asian market development and clinical trial supplies, indicating aggressive moves into new areas. General and administrative costs also surged, especially for the 9-month period, rising from $1.3 million in 2024 to over $4 million in 2025. They attribute this to salaries, bonuses, legal fees related to being a public company, and increased insurance and consulting costs. This reflects the growing pains and costs of operating as a public entity. This section highlights important events happening after the reporting period up to when the document was filed. Good news here, the loan from the CEO was fully repaid. That is another cash outflow, but it clears a related party debt. This reiterates the SEPA news, which is a major event. It lays out the terms Jupiter Neurosciences can sell up to $20 million of stock to Yorkville, with specific pricing rules tied to market prices and limits on how much they can issue without shareholder approval. They will ask shareholders to approve going beyond Nasdaq's 19.99% cap. This details the convertible notes Yorkville is providing. Jupiter Neurosciences received $3.7 million up front, but issued a $4 million note with a 7% discount. They are expecting a second tranche upon shareholder approval and registration effectiveness. The repayment terms and conversion prices are also outlined here. This is what the whole financial hustle is for. The company plans to use funds from its IPO and the SEPA for Parkinson's clinical trials, expanding into Asia, general research, paying off debt, and other corporate needs. This shows their strategic priorities. Jumping back to the audited financial statements for December 2024 and 2023, we see the official numbers. This reinforces the stark financial picture from 2024: zero revenue, a $2.4 million loss, and nearly $4 million burned through operations. Looking at the full balance sheet for December 2024, they had about $3.7 million in cash, but their liabilities were much higher, over $5.9 million, largely due to convertible notes. This shows a negative working capital situation before considering the impact of that IPO. The income statement for 2024 shows total operating expenses of about $3.1 million against zero revenue, resulting in an operating loss of over $3 million. The gain in other income from extinguishment of debt is significant at over $857,000, but it is tempered by interest expenses. This equity statement shows how dramatically their cash position changed in 2024. They went from a deficit of over $5.8 million at the end of 2023 to a positive equity of over $4.1 million at the end of 2024. This strong positive swing is almost entirely due to the capital raised from their IPO, which injected significant cash and boosted additional paid-in capital. The cash flow statement for 2024 is illuminating. They had a huge inflow of over $7.6 million from financing activities, primarily from the IPO, which was enough to cover the large operating cash outflow of nearly $4 million and still end up with a substantial increase in cash. This section gives us a broader overview of what Jupiter Neurosciences does. They are playing a double game, developing prescription drugs for serious conditions and also selling supplements for wellness. The success of their pharmaceutical pipeline, particularly Jotrol for Parkinson's and the Nugavia line, are key to their strategy. This highlights a core problem they're trying to solve with Jotrol. Existing regular resveratrol causes stomach issues at doses that actually work. Their Jotrol formulation aims to fix this with better delivery. Parkinson's disease is their leading pharmaceutical target, seen as a key area for both medical impact and financial opportunity. This marks their move into the consumer health space. The Nugavia launch leverages their Jotrol technology, aiming to capitalize on the booming longevity market. Their key technological partner for Jotrol is Aquanova, working on the unique micellar technology that improves resveratrol's bioavailability. This partnership is critical to their product development. This section dives into who they're up against. For Parkinson's, the competition is established treatments like levodopa. While effective for motor symptoms, they don't stop disease progression, leaving room for new therapies. For Alzheimer's, the landscape is crowded with big players like Biogen, Eli Lilly, and Eisai, each with their approved or late-stage drugs. Jupiter Neurosciences is entering a very competitive and challenging field here. In rare diseases like MP's -1 and Friedreich's ataxia, they face competitors like Sanofi Genzyme, Reata Pharmaceuticals, and others developing gene therapies and specific enzyme replacements. This shows that even in niche markets, the competition is fierce. This introduces the key people running the show. Krista Rosen, the CEO, has a background that includes bringing a drug called Binosto to market, giving him experience in drug development and approvals. Salim El-Masri, the CFO, comes with extensive experience in financial consulting for early-stage companies. Marshall Hayward, the CSO, is also a co-founder and has a strong scientific background, including work at EFFX Pharmaceuticals on Binosto. Alison Silva has a broad background in biotech involved in several companies and product developments, adding significant business and operational expertise. Here we see the details of how these executives are compensated. The significant stock and option awards tied to performance and vesting schedules really stand out, showing a strong incentive for them to drive the company's value up. This is typical for this industry where a lot of potential earnings are linked to equity growth. This again highlights the extreme cash constraints the company faced. A huge amount of accrued compensation was forgiven in exchange for stock options and restricted stock units. This shows the team's deep commitment and belief in the company's future potential, willing to defer cash for equity. This focuses on the selling stockholder, Yorkville. It clarifies that Yorkville is a fund managed by Yorkville Advisors Global LP, and that Mark Angelo is the key decision maker for their investments. This section explains the company's capital stock. They have common stock, with shareholders getting 1 vote per share. There is also preferred stock that the board can issue with various rights, which could impact common shareholders. These provisions in the company's charter and bylaws are designed to make it harder for unwanted takeovers. Things like requiring a supermajority vote to have directors removed or calling special shareholder meetings, only by the board point to measures that can entrench current management and potentially limit shareholder influence on company control. This section details how the selling stockholder, Yorkville, plans to sell the shares. They can sell them directly through brokers or in the open market. It also mentions Yorkville is considered an underwriter in this context. This gives a figure for the estimated costs related to registering these shares for resale. These are fees and expenses primarily borne by the company. This is a technical tax section for foreign investors. It discusses how taxes might apply to dividends and gains from selling the stock. The main takeaway for most investors is that if you are not a US person, you'll likely face a 30% withholding tax on dividends unless a tax treaty reduces it. When it comes to selling stock generally, there is no US tax unless the gain is connected to a US business, or if the company is a US real property holding corporation. Looking at the unaudited balance sheet as of the 30th of September 2025, the picture gets a bit tighter. Cash has dropped significantly to around $723,000. Meanwhile, accrued compensation has climbed considerably to over $1.8 million, and accounts payable and accrued expenses are also up. Add to that their operating lease liabilities, and you can see why they are so keen on that SAPA funding. For the 3 months ending September 2025, the net loss was over $2.2 million, a sharp increase from a loss of about $591,000 in the same period of 2024. This table highlights a massive jump in R&D expenses for the 3-month period, going from just over $91,000 in 2024 to more than $816,000 in 2025. This is directly linked to those service agreements for their Asian expansion strategy and clinical supply costs. General and administrative expenses also exploded from about $401,000 in 2024 to over $1.4 million in 2025 for the same 3-month period. This jump is attributed to salaries, bonuses, legal fees related to NASDAQ listing, and higher insurance and consulting costs. All indicative of a company scaling up operations and facing public company burdens. This note gives us the foundational info on the company's business. They are focused on developing Jotril for rare diseases and CNS disorders, with plans for Nugavir supplements. This is a reminder of past stock splits, a reverse split in 2022 and a forward split in 2024. These actions are often taken to adjust the stock price or share count, but they don't fundamentally change the company's value. Here, they reiterate the going concern warning. This is a critical disclosure, emphasizing the company's financial vulnerability and its reliance on future funding. This note details the loan from the CEO again, but also points out that during 2024, the company repaid much of it. It also mentions ongoing accruals to Titan Advisory Services, a company owned by the CFO for essential financial services. This is a complex section detailing the company's various convertible notes and the accounting treatment for them, especially the derivative liabilities associated with conversion options. It shows how these financial instruments have been modified and repaid or converted over time, impacting their financial statements significantly with gains and losses on extinguishment. All convertible debt appears to be repaid by the end of 2024. This section, on subsequent events, brings us up to date with very recent happenings. It confirms the repayment of the CEO's loan. It reconfirms the SEPA agreement with Yorkville, outlining the crucial details of how Jupiter Neurosciences can potentially sell up to $20 million in stock. Importantly, it notes that they will seek shareholder approval to exceed Nasdaq's 19.99% ownership limit, which is essential for them to access the full potential of the agreement. This details the convertible notes provided by Yorkville, including the initial amount received and the note's face value, confirming the use of an original issue discount. The conversion terms and repayment obligations are also laid out, showing a clear path for Yorkville to potentially convert these notes into stock. So, what is the story here? Jupiter Neurosciences is a company in a high-stakes race. They're trying to crack the code on treating serious neurological conditions with Jotrol, while simultaneously building a consumer brand with Nugevia. They've got smart people, a potentially innovative product in Jotrol, and a new consumer angle. However, the financial pressures are immense. The company is burning through cash, has significant accumulated losses, and faces major risks, including the very real possibility of not being able to continue as a going concern without sufficient funding. The SEPA agreement with Yorkville and the recent IPO are critical lifeboats, but they come with potential dilution for existing shareholders and complex terms. Investing in Jupiter Neurosciences is definitely a bet on their science and future potential, with significant risks attached given their current financial position and development stage. What are your thoughts on Jupiter Neurosciences' strategy and these latest financial disclosures? Let me know in the comments below if you found this deep dive helpful. Please hit that like button, it really does help the channel. And of course, subscribe for more breakdowns of complex corporate filings. Don't forget to join our Discord community, linked in the description, where we keep the conversation going. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.